Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stiltore, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year or so, we've been featuring each fille du roi, or king's daughters, and getting to know their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them. We are now on episode 151. We have come so far, and we've still got a long way to go. So join me, please, as we explore episode 151. But before we begin, let me let you know ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. They subscribe, like, and notify. Not only does it keep you in the know, but it also spreads the word. The next three are kind of more ways to help the channel grow. That is Ko-fi, Etsy, and Patreon. All are different venues that you can use to show your support. So with that being said, let's get started and get to know our fille du roi of episode 151. So our featured fille du roi today is Jeanne Ducorps, dite Leduc, and she is a viewer request. I do not have her in any of my files, so it was a treat to explore this particular lady. Let's get to know Jeanne and her story. As is sometimes the case, we don't have any more information about Jeanne. We do know she was born sometime around 1649. We get this from the census that was later taken somewhere in France. That's all we know. We're assuming it's France. Who knows? It could be Switzerland, it could be Belgium, but let's go with the assumption that it's France. So when does she come over to New France? She comes across in 1666, again, a mystery woman. I do not have the name of her ship. The 1666 ship. I know that there was many girls that came across during that year, but I have yet to secure that information. Anyone with information, please let me know. I would greatly appreciate. I've looked everywhere for it and haven't had much success. So with that being said, let's get to know where she does end up. We do know, thankfully, that she does go to the Maison Saint-Gabriel. And let's talk a little bit about the Maison Saint-Gabriel. As you can see on the right hand of your screen, that is the building as it exists today. It is a museum. It was founded by Marguerite Bourgeois, who is herself the founder of the Congrégation de Notre-Dame de Montréal. She was by far the most influential woman in Quebec. And certainly Montreal's history. She was born in France in 1620, and in 1653, at the request of Paul de Chamédie, Sieur de Maisonneuve, the governor at the time of the French settlement of Montreal, and he invited her to come and, establish a religious congregation and a school, kind of keep, get the community to grow. She then would establish a Notre Dame congregation and helped organize the foundations of the church. And the governor allowed her to use his stable as the first schoolhouse. And this in turn became the first public school in Montreal. And by 1663, she continued her work with the fille du roi by using land that she had purchased on a farm near Pointe Saint-Charles to feed the poor. And so she said, okay, I can have some of these ladies. And these ladies, most of them went to Quebec, but a few went to Montreal. And this is where they were first, taken in, if you will, and taught. Certainly, the Maison Saint-Gabriel, we have proof that they were taught certain, living, how to live here. A lot of them were coming from different places that did not know how to cook or how to clean or things like that. And so she really was instrumental in teaching these girls what they needed to do to survive in New France. So once the ladies were housed at Maison Saint-Gabriel, in much the same way in Quebec City, the nuns would take over and they would say, okay, so you come and visit and we'll check you out. One of those men was Martin Massé, who was born in 1646. His parents were Jacques Massé and Françoise Olivier. He was born in a place called Le Point-sur-Velluard, now called Les Velluards-sur-Vendée. So, again, I want to make sure that you know where your ancestors were, at what it was called, and now if you want to visit, this is where it is. It was established around the 3rd century BC, and it was abandoned, but ultimately it was established by the Church of Saint Nicholas around the 15th century. So ruins of this place, you can see definitely the beginnings of, Gallo-Roman times and that sort of thing. The castle that is there dates from the 14th century, and this is just an overview of the town as it exists now. The church, this second to your left, is the Église de Saint-Nicolas, where he would have been baptized. And then I just wanted to point out the Pays de la Loire is the region of France where he's from, and the département is was kind of like a county, is Vendée. So that gives you some idea of where he is coming from. We know that Martin arrived in Quebec by 1666 based on notarial records, and with all his talents, and we're going to go into that in a minute, it's highly likely that he was an engagé and came to establish his fortune. He was probably a gentleman that was recruited based on that. Let's have a look at the talents that he brought. So he was a blacksmith, a locksmith, and an edge tool maker. So you can imagine during that period how important all of those trades were. He was able to do all of that. So very, very much in demand gentleman. So one of the reasons we know so little about Jeanne is the fact that there is no marriage record. That during the marriage record we have, they're usually it says where they're from and the town or the Baptist or the church, and it tells you their parents. None of that. We just know that sometime around 1670, she was married at Sorel. We don't know any other information. Now remember, she came in 1666, so she actually stayed with the nuns for quite a while. So it's interesting. Let me put it that way. It's possible that she wanted to, I conjecture all these kind of stories in my head, and so I think, well, maybe she wanted to become a nun and changed her mind, or, maybe there was just no one, that she fancied. I don't know. We'll just leave it to history. So we know that they do settle in Montreal. Let's talk a little bit about this amazing city. It started off as Ville-Marie by the founder, Paul de Chamédy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially a missionary center. It was established in May of 1642. The colony certainly would not thrive, and it was on the verge of extinction because Trois-Rivières and Quebec City really held the New France and were really the prominent cities, and people kind of looked at Montreal as this island of kind of a fool's island, but Chamonix persevered, and he went back to France and he recruited 100 settlers, which would become known as the Grande Recrue. And remember, we talked about Marguerite Bourgeois; she was one of them. So basically, they had to fend for themselves. One of the major reasons they had such a hard time was there was no army to protect them against the Indian threat. But by 1663, they finally established a small army, a regular militia, and that helped a great deal kind of solidify the town and make it more hospitable, if you will, to families and that sort of thing. And that just gives you the right. On your right is a picture of old Montreal as we see it today, and it being born about an hour from Montreal. Obviously, this is a place that I know very well. And so these are just more historic pictures of Montreal, what it would have looked like, either an artist's description of it or an old map. In the middle, we have the 1681 census where we have Martin Massé, forgeron, which is his profession of blacksmith. Jeanne Ducorps. You can understand that the spelling back then was not exactly perfect. Their children, Michel, Marie, Jeanne, Martin, and they have 8 arpents. So 8 is about 6 acres of land, 5 to 6 acres of land. Let us have a look at the children that they produced. They would have 8 children in all. Michel married Margaret Cook and would have 1 child who survived. It should also be noted that Margaret's mother was a native woman. For those of you with this lineage, this is your connection. Marie married Jean-Baptiste Potier and had 5 children, 5 of whom all of whom made it to adulthood. Jean-Baptiste's mother was Marie de la Haye, a fille du roi that we have yet to feature. André died before the 1681 census. Jeanne married Michel Campeau and had 5 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Marthe died at 13 years of age. Marie-Françoise died at 2 days. Very sad. Marie-Anne married Guillaume Meilloux and had 2 children, both of whom survived. And Catherine would pass away at the age of 12. So not a lot of descendancy for this particular couple. So Marthe would pass away at the age of 68 on May 12, 1714. At that time, they would have been married 44 years, just an incredible accomplishment. Jeanne herself would pass away December 19, 1727, at the remarkable age of 78. By 1729, 2 years after her passing, when they made the famous study, there were 65 descendants from this couple, even though they didn't have a lot of children or descendancies from the children immediately. Obviously, some lines thrived, and that is why my viewer is here today to, to really bear witness to the fact that this couple existed and are still part of the fabric of Quebec and of North America. Some of my favorite resources: La Société des Filles du Roi, that I use consistently. We have Quebec Genealogical E-Society, Nos Origines, Généalogie Québec, Migration, and Facebook, the Filles du Roi Descendancy, which is a very lovely group, very, very sympathetic, by and large, individuals who are on that Facebook page. Really, really encourage you to check that out and see if you can make some cousin connections as well. In episode 151, we don't know a lot about Jeanne, but we do know that her story and her connection to New France has remained throughout these 300 or 400 years. And sometimes it's not about the amount of descendancies, it's the strength of the line. And I just feel like Jeanne and Marthe had this really good connection, and she came across. We don't know a lot about what she was before she married Marthe, but we do know that she was right by his side, and for 44 years. So this is sometimes I love it. It's nice to have drama and everything like that to be able to tell the story. But sometimes when I get these stories that are just lovely, just, they lived, they had children, they, loved each other. And sometimes it's a nice thing, So we want to thank Jeanne for her contribution, her sacrifices, and most of all, for her contribution to New France and ultimately North America. And with that, I will see you on episode 152. Until then, au revoir.